Well, good afternoon and welcome to part 2 of the Access ARPA Internship Toolkit webinars. We're so glad that you can join us today. I'm Kaylee Hogan-Schnitker, Director of Talent Strategy with the Lincoln Partnership for Economic Development. Today, we'll hear from UNL Career Services' very own Courtney Strayer and Tracy Lundgren about how to strategically recruit student talent at the university level. We'll talk about the importance of internships and how your company and what they can do for your company, as well as how you can kickstart the hiring process, no matter your experience with interns. We're super thankful that they could join us, and also thank you so much to the Nebraska Chamber for hosting these 3 internship webinars over the last month. These webinars are meant to help employers across the state develop or improve their internship programs in preparation for the new Intern Nebraska grant funding. This past spring, $20 million in general funds were appropriated for the Intern Nebraska program, and the legislature also approved several program changes. Just yesterday, the Department of Economic Development issued an RFP for the purpose of selecting qualified Nebraska nonprofit entities to provide services necessary to carry out the grant functions of Intern Nebraska. Bidders are responsible for providing grant management services on behalf of the Nebraska Department of Education, or Department of Economic Development, excuse me. I imagine many of you are already familiar with Intern Nebraska, but for those of you who have not participated, here's kind of a rundown of what it is and the goals of the program. The Intern Nebraska grant program is available to Nebraska employers who provide students with valuable internship opportunities to retain students in the state of Nebraska at institutions of higher education, convert students to full-time employment, and attract workers to Nebraska by assisting businesses willing to provide paid internships. The goals of the department are to increase those overall numbers of internships in Nebraska, to retain, which we'll spend some time talking about today, to retain students in the state of Nebraska, attract workers, convert those students to full-time employees, and engage post-secondary education partners in program marketing to employers, and engage the underserved student and diverse populations with internships as well. Bidders must be a Nebraska-based nonprofit, and the proposals are due by Wednesday, December 21st at 2 p.m. For additional information about the RFP, as well as the Intern Nebraska program, I am going to throw some information in the chat in order for you all to receive that information. Now let's get back to our time today. We have 2 great guest speakers with us, Courtney Strayer and Tracy Lundgren. Courtney Strayer serves as the Employer and Campus Relations Coordinator for UNL Career Services. In her role, she works with employers and other external partners to make connecting with campus easier in regard to recruiting and hiring needs, as well as serves as a liaison between University Career Services and the career community campus-wide. Tracy Lundgren serves as the Director of Career Services at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and she leads and coordinates a team of professionals who care deeply about helping students discover career paths of interest and providing guidance and connection on how to break into a variety of fields. Her University Career Services team also coordinates employer relations and career fairs and events across the campus and serve hundreds of employers that provide meaningful career opportunities for today's students. We will post their information in the chat, as well as send it out after today's recording, along with the previous 2 webinars that we've recorded. Please be sure to use the Q&A function to ask questions throughout today's presentations, as we will plan to answer those near the end of the webinar. All right, Courtney, Tracy, why don't you take it from here?
Awesome. Thanks, Kaylee. So hello, everybody. Like Kaylee said, my name is Courtney Strayer, and I am joined by Tracy Lundgren, and we're here to talk to you all today about retaining your talent. So one thing you see is it's Internship Toolkit Part 2. So after this, if you were not able to attend Toolkit, the first part of the toolkit, it is recorded and I believe available to view or will be soon. So skipping through kind of the introduction, which we've already done, we really want to jump right in and talk about, so you've hired your intern, what's next, right? You know, we talk about how we want more internships in the state and we want to develop these programs, but that work is not done unless we retain that talent to stay in Nebraska and hopefully stay with your companies. So we've broken it down really into 3 key parts. You know, in the first part, we talked about developing your recruitment plan, talking about how you're going to bring an intern in, what work are they going to do. So now it's time to act on it. So we're going to talk about how you can provide guidance and feedback effectively, how to effectively coach and mentor your intern, and then also encourage your intern.
Great job, Courtney. I'm really putting this on you.
Thank you. Thank you. So the first one is provide guidance and feedback, right? It sounds simple. It feels like something we all do, but we all know that recognition is a tireless act. So when it comes to providing that guidance and feedback, think of them, you know, there are young professionals, but they're also students who are eager to learn and want to develop the skills in the field that they're working with. So work with your intern to create goals and objectives for their work. Talk about setting expectations, giving them something to work towards, helping them understand that end goal of what a project is. You know, they've had their classroom projects, but I think we all know a project in the workforce is a different beast sometimes. It's an ever-changing one, and it's constantly building on top of it. I'm sure we all have projects we're reflecting on right now. So kind of coming in with that, it's review the internship position description and look at those goals that you set for yourself when you were about to hire your intern, saying you wanted them to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, P, Q, all of the alphabet, it feels like. Go through and talk about how are you seeing those goals being met? Are they meeting those objectives that you set, those learning goals? And then also too, don't be afraid to ask an intern for feedback. I was just talking with an employer earlier and I said, you know, I can't learn and I can't grow as a person if you're not telling me if you just tell me I'm doing great every day, I'm not going to learn and better myself. So it's kind of the reverse of that. Don't be afraid to ask the intern for feedback, especially if this is the first intern that you've ever had. Ask them for that feedback, see how their experiences are going, and don't be afraid to make adjustments and pivot. This is a learning experience for all of us. The students are learning. This is most likely their first experience or second, either way, very early in the workforce. And also, you're new to it too. The best thing is, as long as the projects are getting done and you both are happy with the experience, you might experience bumps along the way, but that's only going to make you better at the end of it. So also a great way too, I'm sure we all have them with our own peers in our office, but our one-to-ones, right? Don't be afraid to integrate that in with your intern as well. It's a great way to have regular check-ins, give and receive feedback. I know with my intern, I always try to ask her, how are you feeling with your projects? Do you feel like you have enough work? Do you feel like you have too much work? Where do we need to pivot? Because that's one thing we notice with early talent is sometimes they might bite off more than they can chew. So I'd rather have that conversation with her up front of being like, hey, where do you feel like you're sitting? If we need to pull back or add more, let's do that. Let's pivot, let's talk, let's get through it. So those one-on-ones allow me a structured time in my schedule. So as the manager, I feel prepared. I know that this is a dedicated time for her. But I'm also staying on top of her work and making sure that she's doing everything she needs to be doing, because really she's there to help me finish my job. So it all kind of comes full circle and makes it really easy.
I want to jump in on that part just a little bit. I think one pattern we see a lot with our students, especially in an internship, they're excited, but they're nervous. And a lot of times they're nervous to speak up or give you unsolicited feedback. So I think, again, if you're, it's in order to offer a really great experience, asking them for their feedback, asking them specific questions about if they feel like what the barriers are, or do they feel like they're meeting this goal? Are there other ways that they should go about that? I think that's one thing I even learned in Courtney's and I's one-on-ones. She thinks so differently than I do. So if I'm asking her that and I'm bringing her into that conversation, so she doesn't have to tell me or give me unsolicited feedback, it's a really great management way to integrate them and have them feel more involved and more empowered in the organization.
And especially too, going into that, it's one of our biggest things that interns we've realized that students want is they want to feel like they're a part of the team. They don't want to feel like they're out running around. They want to be treated as an adult at the table, just like everybody else is. So really good thing to consider. Thanks for that input, Tracy. So kind of going in with that too, let them know when they're doing well just as often as when they might need improvement. Sometimes when you're super busy, you feel like you got to get down to the nitty gritty. I always like to lead with the Oreo method, right? Start off with a constructive compliment, get into the meat of it, but then finish it off saying, this is how I think you can improve based on the skills that you already have. So it gives you that balance. It's constructive feedback. Like I said, if I would tell my intern every day that she's a rock, I mean, I do tell her she's a rock star every day. Probably not good for her ego, but I love it. But we sit down and I'm like, hey, like, here are some things that I think you can build on. Another thing too with that is if they send me a project and I make edits, I go through and walk them through those edits and kind of say, hey, here was my strategy behind editing this. I love what you did here, but thinking about it in this context really helps. And that's where you can bring in that teaching element, that, your skill sets that you've already learned to make that experience a lot better. And also go through and see if any additional assistance or training is needed. Can they connect with other people on your team to help build it up? Even if it's working with IT to go through some of the day-to-day things that you know how to do so they're not relying on you. Making them comfortable with everybody around the team, and also kind of look to see where they can get that additional feedback from. It doesn't have to just be on you as the intern manager to get everything done and help make sure they have this best, the feedback and guidance they might need. It's okay to lean on your team just like you would for yourself.
In fact, that's necessary. I just want to break in a little bit on it too, as a manager of an intern, or even onboarding even a new employee. I think that one thing we hear from our students is they want to make those connections in your organization. They want to connect with more people. And we know that the more connections they make, they're going to feel more empowered and just do better work for you. So I think that's such an incredible strategy.
And even with that, selfishly, sometimes it's really nice when they don't have to ask you for every little thing. Like we know, we'll have our IT team in our office, and they now, since they're in here and they're connecting with us, our interns can easily just go, they feel comfortable asking them for help.
Right.
My printer's not working. I have a computer problem. How can I fix that? Frees up time in your schedule, and is also teaching them that autonomy. It sounds so silly, but it's something we all had to learn, of how do you ask those for help when you feel like you can do it all on your own. So it's a really great thing for that. But that is kind of breaking it down for that provide guidance and feedback section. So you'll see a lot of overlap throughout these. They are a little bit different, but this is where we go into the coach and mentor your intern. So build them up, right? Interns want to mentor just like we all did when we were young, or even me. Like, I think all of us still want to mentor no matter at what stage of life you're at. You want somebody who will help guide and encourage you, help bring you up, tell you when you're doing things wrong, give you the advice that you're desperately craving. So don't be afraid to try to be that person, or find somebody in your office who's good at that. Maybe it's pairing them with somebody who is also a few years out of college, but in the department that you're in. Don't be afraid to help find them that mentor, even if it's not fit to be you. And also too, it's really, from the intern perspective, it helps you fulfill that kind of idea of learning, right? They're in school, they're eager to learn. So having that mentorship, it provides that extension of the learning process. It gives them somewhere to safely ask questions, not even just about the work that they're doing, but maybe the future of their career path. Where do they see themselves? Do they see themselves staying in this direction, or do they want to pivot to another area of the company or another field? Internships and learning is, you might realize that exactly what you're doing isn't for you, but maybe they'll be a great fit in another area of your organization. So how can you help foster that connection and coach them through those tough decisions? I think all of us could look back at some point and probably say what you thought you were going to do at 18 is not exactly what you're doing right now. And I'm sure we all could reflect on changes or pivots in our career paths and the people who helped us understand those along the way. And also too, kind of with that coaching part, don't be afraid to allow them to sit in on meetings or join in on some of those conversations. Again, they're here to learn. And you might also get some new perspectives with that too. An intern doesn't have to be locked at their desk, hearing things by side. One of the best ways is to bring them into the conversation and make them feel like they're also a part of it as well. So they can really see what it's like to be in a meeting with different levels of kind of on the totem pole in your office. And also too, if you see that they're excelling in what they're giving you, don't be afraid to beef up the projects. Help develop their skills once you're working with them and kind of challenge them, keep pushing them forward. One of my favorite things is to push my intern out of her comfort zone because she is really talented and she knows that. So sometimes I have to shake her up a little bit and be like, you need to keep growing and developing so you can go take on those even bigger projects and have that confidence to advocate for yourself and the work that you can do. So
one joke that we make in our office, mostly because we really utilize interns to help us with workload. Often we don't have a ton of full-time positions that they necessarily transition into, but there's a selfless process about that. Like, you really kind of are coaching and mentoring your intern, and you don't know where they're going to end up. Of course, if they're doing great work and you do see that there's a potential position for them, that's great. But still, to coach and mentor them is just important for where their next career move will be regardless. So I think that's also big picture. You want to get that reputation of coaching and mentoring interns. You want your interns, even if they didn't end up working for you in a full-time position, telling people about the work that they did for you as an intern. Like, that for branding is critical. And for those of us that work on a campus, we hear about that from students. That's how organizations that have great internships really create great brand recognition. So I think it's really important that you build this in as part of your culture, and not only expect it from you as an internship supervisor, but also just build this into your culture of coaching and mentoring interns, even if you're not directly overseeing them. Others in your workplace, coach and mentor these students. They want that. They need that.
100%. And like Tracy said, we really do rely on our interns, and they're an integral part of our team. When we schedule team things, we consider their schedules as well, just to try and, make them feel like, and not even make them feel like, we want them to feel that they're just as valued for the work that they're doing, because our work would not be possible without them.
No. Obviously it's part of our job and mission at the university to connect them with the other professionals, but I think that's something that we've really tried to do, is make connections or help them facilitate connections with others to learn more about what's out there. That's, students are really hungry to learn about what are the opportunities, and then really try to figure out where they fit best.
100%. Even for us, it's like, I'm going to be like, go to the career fair. You already know where the office is. It's right across. You have to go. If it's helping, my intern, even my student assistants with their resumes and cover letters, it's building upon that, knowing that there's going to be a next step. So it is a selfless act, truly. We're just out. No, I'm just kidding. But it is great work. And going into that too. So the coaching and mentoring side, now it's really the fun part of the encouraging. So the coach and mentor, you get the good and the bad, right? You get the good conversations and you get the tough conversations. And how do you have those productively? But this kind of helps you think too of encouraging your intern, not even just to do more, but making them feel like their work is valued. And that sounds very soft, but really it's make the intern feel like they're a part of your company. If you're having a company lunch and you can afford, from a budget perspective, include them in that. It's saying like, hey, you are a part of this team as well. Now there are, obviously differences and everything, but to take interns on a tour of your facilities, right? Like we said earlier, make them feel comfortable with the team as a whole. So that way, when they have to ask those questions, they feel empowered and confident to do so. One of my favorite things I reflect on my kind of like big internship, quote unquote, was having an internship program, was encouraging interns to spend breaks or lunches like together. And also in places where people gather. It got to a point where in the first few weeks, about 6 or 7 interns of us had a lunch group. And so it was kind of whoever could be there, we would go sit in the lunchroom with everybody else and hang out as interns. So we didn't need to, necessarily be with everybody, but we were in the space, we were visible, we were public. And I also got to meet other interns across a lot of different fields. Also, like I said, we said earlier, the opportunity to attend and observe professional meetings, giving them that face time as well is huge. I didn't mention that earlier, but giving them not the seat at the table, but the face time with maybe higher ups, so that this is talent that you're developing too, because at the end of the day, their work is also a reflection of you as their manager. So if you can come in and you have your intern prepped and poised and ready to go, that's also a great reflection on you as well. So it's kind of a twofer, you get to develop a student and their talents, but it's also a great thing just to say that I did this, I helped develop this student, and I'm proud to show them off. And then also, like, other professionals in the office are great to connect them with, and don't be afraid to foster those connections. Sometimes Tracy has to remind me, like, I'm gonna have to let go at some point with my intern, but it's saying, okay, how can I help you make that connection? If it's work talking with other parts, maybe they're in between like marketing and HR, have them talk with other sides, and find that connection, and know that you're doing a good job and just fostering their development and their learning. And at the end of the day, like, interns do come and go, but interns can also be full-time, or they can stay in your city and contribute to your workforce as a whole. So it can be somebody that you look at as a peer in just a few short years that you're seeing out at maybe networking events that you go to, or community events and everything. It's a great way. I actually was at a event with the Young Professionals group a few weeks ago and ran into my old internship boss. And so we really got to connect about the development of how she helped me get to where I am, how proud she was of me. So even being the intern, it was truly a full circle moment of now being a professional in the field. We both work for different industries now, but getting to connect on what she taught me and even what she learned from me was a really cool experience.
I like to always tell my interns that someday I want them to give me a job. Someday I want them to hire me back, or hire me for wherever they're going to be. So just continuing to encourage them, especially if they're doing a great job and you can see that their future is really bright. Just continue to, I think, open more doors and make more connections for them. They're going to appreciate that more than you know. And again, their word of mouth, what they're going to share with others about you, your organization, is going to come back. I mean, to me, this is about karma. This is organizational karma. If you put this into your interns, it's going to come back to you in different and amazing ways.
100%. And lastly, too, looking at those resumes, like I said, professional development docs, and also too, if you are a portfolio-based industry, help them with their portfolio. Talk about things you learned, or even as a hiring manager, what are things that you see that you absolutely hate, or you absolutely love? Give them that insider tips and tricks. If you're a professional exam or an industry that relies on professional exams, tips and tricks on how you passed yours. What path did you take to get there? Helping understand that there is a life after internship, and encouraging them through that is huge.
One thing that one of our colleagues, Amber Poppy, who oversees our social and design interns, does such a great job of. And again, she didn't necessarily do this on her first 1 or 2 interns. She's really refined her practice over that. So I think if you're just starting your internship program, know that this is a race. You're going to learn how to kind of create more structure as you go along. But I think now she's into, I'm not sure, maybe 5 years of having interns, and she does such a great job on the front end, setting up what their outcomes are going to be and what she wants them to even have for their portfolio. And so she's very intentional about, I want you to have these 2 print pieces. I want you to have, some photography, just basically like a really strong foundation for going into any type of marketing, entry-level marketing position. And then she also has them do a presentation to our whole office, basically giving us their portfolio and just some of the highs and the lows and the problem solving, and really highlighting their wins. And it's so fun to sit through. But she also was intentional in setting that up for them and setting those markers along the way. And so they leave with something that's so tangible that it's really incredible to watch.
100%. And one thing too, even to Amber's credit, is she advocates for them so much to us that it's me going to her asking, hey, is your intern available for this project that I need help with? And she lets me and treats them again like a full-time, like she's managing full-time employees of, is this in their capacity? When do I need to let you know about this project so I can fit it in their capacity? It's a really great dynamic. And again, too, like Tracy said, it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. I have learned, so my intern is the first intern I've ever had. And I have learned so much by coaching her and mentoring her. So I'm excited to see how I'll develop when the new intern comes in, and all of that. So it's definitely a learning curve. It's stuff we just want to give you the tips and tricks that we've learned and what students are saying, to help prepare you of things to think about, like, oh yeah, that makes sense, to give you the leg up once you start having those interns in. So kind of talking about what students want. Tracy, did you have something to add?
No.
Okay, perfect. Well, share whatever you want. I love when you share. But so talking about what students want, we've broken it down. So talking with students really over the years, it's really breaking it down to 9 things that students want. So we have them all on the screen, and it's kind of stuff we've already touched about, but I think I want to point out a few key ones that really stand out to me and I know are valuable to me as an intern is take time to explain. I'm a hands-on learner. So, and I can be stubborn. So if I don't understand, okay, listen, we don't need to put me on blast on a public webinar here. But I like take time to explain, like, I'm going to ask you questions and I might it might come off really defensive, but I'm really just trying to learn. And I am just trying to understand the thought process because it's not something that comes naturally to me. So keeping that in mind, that they might, like even Tracy said, her and I think very differently. So sometimes it's nice when she asks me questions and I have the opportunity to explain, and then she explains her thought and we can kind of explain it back and forth as well.
Can I piggyback on that? Because
Yeah,
I think that's a really good one, and one that I think you've taught me about, obviously communicating the higher vision more. And then one thing that's also really great and when you're doing that is if you're open and asking for that feedback from an intern, they have an approach that might be so amazing that you have not thought about. And I think that's something you and I, like, you are like, I have a really strategic approach. I'd like to try to do that. And I think that's something our interns have really surprised us with as well, especially around technology. So there you go.
Yeah, thank you. No, yeah, 100%. And it's again kind of that. So don't be afraid to ask them those questions, because while you don't have to be an expert to be a good mentor. And so keep that in mind. But another thing too that I really want to add is the make space for me. Literally, this is just a thing of give them a desk, give them a place to work, give them a place so they can call their own or some rotate. I know every organization has a little bit different. I remember at an internship having to share my boss's desk for like 3 weeks while they figured out where to put me. It's very uncomfortable. Another internship, they didn't quite have the space yet, so they were going to have me float. But actually, my first day, one of my coworkers went on maternity leave, or had her baby, and went on maternity leave. So magically, a desk opened up. So don't be afraid to think about those things. And we talked about this a bit last week too. But the make space for me, literally, give them a place where they can feel like they have ownership of what they're working on and all that.
And to me, that shows that you've had you were intentional about bringing them into the organization. If you haven't, made a space or have a machine that they can work on or have a plan, you're starting things off pretty rocky, and they're kind of thinking, whoa, did they really want me? So that's, I think, to me, it always comes back to intention. What were your intentions, and being intentional?
And that even ties into like be intentional and prepared of, you're not going to have the answer to everything and nothing's going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes along the way, but go in saying, I have these goals for this intern and I want them here, and I'm ready in my like intentionality and preparedness to have them here and to learn from them as well. and be ready to teach them and be ready to learn and grow with them. I think it's more of what that means. You don't have to have every detail figured out. But like Tracy said, even having a desk for them is a huge step, saying, we want this person here, we value their experience, we value them as a member of our team, and we're excited for them to join. So those are like really three of mine. I think also do what you say and say what you do kind of goes in with that, of make sure that your expectations that you're setting for them are the same expectations you have for yourself. If you're expecting your intern to be 5 minutes early is late, but you're showing in 30 minutes late every day, that doesn't really send a good message. I am no early bird at all. So I try to, and I appreciate flexibility in myself. So I try to encourage with my intern and student workers of just communicate with me. Things come up, life happens. I know I have my own life happening at times. So just keep me in the loop, as you know, you don't have to tell me everything. But I can't advocate for you if you're not being transparent with me. And I always try to, emphasize that to them as well, and being like, I want to advocate for you. And it's how I treat myself and my full-time staff members as well. So you just gotta hold true to your word. And also it kind of comes in with that of be honest when you make mistakes. There are times where I will go to my intern and be like, I goofed, I'm sorry. Let's work through it together, and learn and grow. So
one that I want to just talk a little bit about is, and I think this is an opportunity with the internship funding, is, we have had some goals that my leadership really wanted us to take on, that were going to be really challenging to fit into already full-time staff workloads. And so we've hired a couple of really great interns, and we've had to be very specific on, here's the goal and here's what's being expected of us. And we need you to help us think about how we're going to approach this, and really give them a high stakes project, and explain that this is something that we need to meet, but right now we're struggling to figure out who on our team would do this. But so this is going to be part of your project. And I think there's something about that. I think there's a challenge, the fact that they're doing real work that matters, that I'm literally going to take that a level or two above me to show that we're meeting these goals, and that they're a huge part of that, and that they're also coming up with a strategy to meet that. And we've had a couple of interns just really impress me beyond belief with the approach that they took. So I think giving real work, giving real projects, and saying, why those matter, and again, just makes them, makes their role important, and makes the work that they do important. And Gen Z is telling us over and over, they want their work to matter. They want to do interesting things. They want they want an individualized experience, and they want to contribute.
And exactly with that, it's saying it doesn't have to be meaningful in the sense of empowering others, or, it doesn't have to be exactly that, but it can be hey, this is, and even afterwards, I'll have my one-on-one with my intern, and I'll be so here's the project I had you do, and here's how it impacted the big picture of the whole vision. And they're oh, wow. Or even when I give it to them saying, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, because it'll tie into this, this, and this, and help us kickstart this. Also too, there are some things these kids, they're not really kids, they're 20 years old, but they can do a lot. And so it's even me saying I pretty much put my intern in charge of all of our recognized student organization project communication. I was come up with your timelines, your emails, your, what's your goal for this, your form, everything that you need to do. I want you to own this part of the project from start to finish.
Yeah.
Again, it also took off a lot of my plate. It was one less thing I had to do. So yeah, there's some coaching elements, but the hour of going through it and talking saved me from the 5 or 6 hours of work I would have had to put in. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of my interns, and I think that the impact that we have, when you give a project something like that, I'm just thinking about Louisa, who I was having do a lot of web work. And now she's totally into code. Like she learned coding and is going to take her next career step is in tech. And it all started on a project that we gave her regarding our website. She just really threw herself into it, ended up loving it, ended up getting really good at it. And I can't even imagine, what the next steps will be for her in her career, but it was really fun to see that. And I think last night we had an event around alums and folks that work in law and policy and government, and almost all of them said, I got started because of an internship. I had an internship in this field. It helped me break in. It helped me see that I was a fit for this work. The person that supervised me mentored me and helped me make other connections. So I think these are so important in their, even the projects that they do are so important in having them see, yes, this is the kind of work I want to do.
100%. But again, you can see on there too, the 9 things that students want. We won't go into all of them. We're about at time and I want to make sure we leave room for questions. So I will take this off and then would love to answer any questions any of you might have. I know kind of Kaylee, I think you said you had a few, so I'm happy to answer those, or we're happy to answer those.
So clearly an intern sticking around means that within that first kind of 30 to 90 days, you have really won them over. What are some ways that you can prepare your current employees for bringing on interns and creating that space during that time as well? Because everyone's working with them, not just their direct report.
I think a big thing is when you're onboarding them, onboard them like you would a full-time employee. I mean, obviously they won't have like the benefits conversation and all of those things, but when you introduce a full-time employee and announce their arrival, announce just like you would, same with the intern, saying this face is going to be joining our team. We're excited to have them. Here's the work that they're going to be working on. And feel free to reach out to like them or myself for, like as the hiring manager with any questions or any, thing you might need from them. And then same too, like when you're walking them around the office, don't say, oh, they're just a student, like they're an employee. They're here to help you. So I think really embracing that. There's not too much of a difference between internship and full-time employee. I think it's really just like the benefits and the salary, and you work 40 hours a week now. So really once you get them in that space though, it's treating them, we all want to be treated like valued human beings. We all want to feel accepted and celebrated in our workplaces, and they just want to be treated like what it's like to be an employee.
I think it's all about onboarding. I think you pretty much pick and choose the areas that you could onboard or use to onboard your intern, just like you would a full-time employee. Again, making sure that you're making connections with the staff early, and then also prepping your staff to really interact with and get to know and make them feel comfortable. And I think always when an expectation I have on my team is to make sure that you're letting the intern know that if they have any questions, that they can come to you, that they can come, not just their supervisor, because sometimes their supervisor might be remote and so they may need somebody else. So just creating that environment where they feel like a part of the team really early on. But onboarding also takes intentional and preparation. And so I think that's the other thing. It's not just about getting them a seat and a desk and a computer. It's also having an intentional onboarding plan that so you're integrating them right away.
And even one thing too is, set the expectation for them that in both of them, like that they should talk to each other. If you're working with your team saying like, hey, can you go talk with the intern? You know what I mean? Just to try to help foster that.
Can you go talk to the intern?
Not like that. Okay, maybe not like that. But having that, like, I always think of with my students sometimes of like, if I'm going to be remote that day, being like, hey, like if you have questions, ask X, Y, and Z. Because I want them to feel comfortable going up to those people so they can build those connections as well. Yeah.
What are some ways you can work with a current intern, especially maybe you only have one, to kind of help grow and refine the program? Are there leadership opportunities for them to take in kind of that role as you continue to grow?
100%. I think it's really, as you're looking to grow, ask them parts of their experience that they like and don't like. How did we as a company support you? How did, get that one-to-one feedback from them and really use their input to help shape the program, because they are the peers of the people that you're trying to hire to develop your program. See what they like, they didn't like. What are their friends saying they like at their internships? Don't be afraid to kind of poach some ideas, I guess, in that way from your intern, and really let them have ownership over that process so they can also feel like, wow, I was the first intern and I helped shape this whole program.
And I think in order to create that type of relationship, you've got to start that early. You've got to create an open environment where they feel comfortable, where you've created some trust and rapport for them to give you feedback. You're listening to their feedback. You're making some adjustments. They're seeing that and feeling that. Otherwise, you can ask them, if you haven't created that type of environment, you're probably not going to get that type of feedback. But so if you do it intentionally on the early side, you can be asking them those questions throughout the experience to help you refine your program.
All right, I do have another question. Again, this is a statewide conversation, and so we have different sizes of businesses, ranging all the way from small to very large. Courtney, you talked a lot about engagement of interns with each other, but if you only have one, kind of what are ways to encourage that relationship making when there might be some generational differences, or maybe a community doesn't have a YPG group?
Yeah, 100%. So I think really with that is it helps when you start by, again, like that intentional preparedness of when you onboard them, treating them like a full-time adult, like a full-time employee, and helping them make connections with the peers in the office, no matter what age. I even know when I started in my office, I was at like a weird gap of everybody was a little bit older than me, much wiser, of course. So it was like a difference between, I was closer in age to the students I was working with than my peers in my office. So even being in my early, stages of my career, it's like, okay, like how do I develop those relationships and find that comfort and all of that? So really it was trying to push myself out of my comfort zone. I learned from them, they learned from me, I hope. And it really kind of helped make those moments just a little bit easier. I think one thing too of, if I know not every organization has like a chamber to go through or anything, but even if it's, you can make connections with other businesses in your area and say, do you have an intern? Maybe we can do like an intern happy hour event thing. If you are in Lincoln, I'll definitely plug it, especially for you, Kaylee. But I was a my turn student when I went through. So I got to go through and meet interns from all over the city of Lincoln. And then it was a fun full circle moment because we sent our interns to do the program this year. So, don't be afraid to capitalize on those opportunities. They're free. So you should do them, but get it out there and just kind of say, the community doesn't have to necessarily be from you, but in the essence of retaining talent, you want them to feel like this city they're living in is a place that they can stay and that the work that they're doing is valued. So it's like, yeah, you might be the only entry-level talent person at your job, but you're in a city with community and you're meeting other people, and it's a place that you can still see yourself. So if you don't have opportunities throughout your chamber or anything, talk to other businesses, make those connections too, and figure it out from there.
I think from a manager's perspective, I'm just creating connectedness, whether they're the only intern, but again, it's really your job to create that connectedness between your team, and really talk about, how you want and prepare your team to integrate and really embrace the intern, especially if there's only one intern. So that can be really challenging because you already have a lot of things going on. I certainly know that. And but like celebrating together, even birthday club, book club, we don't do FAC with ours because they're students, but you know, who knows, like just trying to find little pockets of time where you can bring your staff together and integrate the intern. It goes a really long way in terms of creating connectedness for the intern, especially if they're the only one in your office.
Do you have any resources or toolkits or for to do this work well?
Yes, and I will pull it up right now because I have it bookmarked and I can throw it in the chat. But one thing our office has done, and it really goes for both recruiting and retaining your intern, is we on our website have kind of launched an internship toolkit. So it walks you through posting your jobs, what are students looking for, kind of all of that. So a lot of what we've talked about now, but some great resources there as well. I will send that out.
I think with just continue to utilize us. If you have questions, you can always email us, call us. I know there are other career centers at other institutions here locally that would also do that as well. We're really a resource for you. We're really excited about expanding opportunities for students. We want to help connect you to our student talent. They're hungry for opportunities. And so we're a resource for you as well, especially if you're like, hey, you know, we're considering this, we could review things for you. We could look at, like, would you look at our onboarding plan? Sure, we would be happy to make any type of anything to help you, you know, develop your program.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any final thoughts for the good of the cause today?
I think really it's like we keep, emphasizing this a lot, but it's a, oh, thank you, Holly, for everyone would make sense, not just host and panelists for sharing. That would make sense. Doing great today. But like I said, nothing's going to be perfect. You're going to have bumps in the road. But I think the more open you are to learning and growing with your intern, the better internship program experience you're going to have, whether it's 1 or 5 or 50. Really just do it. And also to stay authentic to your organization and your company. You don't have to do something just because somebody else is doing it. If your company strives on these values, and your employees love that, finding the culture where you just feel it's not forced is really more important than trying to feel like the cool kids on the block. So,
and mine is just be intentional and actually prepare, make a plan, and then also be flexible when you're in that plan. But if you come out and you start with, okay, here are the goals, here are the outcomes that we want, here are some of the projects that we want, like really kind of have that. You don't have to have all the details, but if you are planful and creating a structure, and then you go out and recruit, you're going to be able to, you'll be able to recruit a better intern because you're going to know what to say and what you need and what you want. And then you're going to be able to facilitate that better with them, and then be flexible in how it goes. I think you'll be successful.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here today. I've really enjoyed hearing from both of you, and I hope that everyone else got as much out of today as I did. Again, you will receive the slides as well as the recording of this session, along with the 2 others after the program. Thank you again, Tracy, Courtney, Nebraska Chamber, for doing this. We appreciate your support, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Kaylee. Thanks for having us.